Okay, so now that we've had your yummy dip, we're going to move on to, I think, a rather quick entree, using some of your same ideas. So, like I said, I'm not a big fish eater, but I will eat anything that has a little crunchy coating on it. So what we're going to make is I have a Chilean sea bass, which I actually just found out is not a sea bass, it's actually a cod.
Yep.
But I didn't know that. But it's actually a cod, but it's one of the fish that I find has a great texture. And if you're not a big fish eater and you're trying to make a shift over to healthier, meat without feet type of dinners and meals, I think this is a good alternative before jumping into maybe like a salmon, which can have a little bit more of a stronger flavor.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what we're going to do, it's going to be real quick and simple. I'm going to make the Chilean sea bass. I'm going to pan sear it, and then we're going to roast it in the oven. And before we roast it, I'm going to top it with a parsley gremolata, which is basically going to be parsley with lemon zest. And we're going to mix it in with our whole wheat panko breadcrumbs, right? Another small change in our diet,
Absolutely.
Switching from white grains to whole wheat. And then as you get used to that, you can switch over to more whole grain type breads. Anyway, so that's going to give it a ton of flavor. And I use the lemon zest. The lemon zest, and then I save the rest of the lemon to squeeze over the fish. So once I pan seared it on both sides, I throw in some Kalamata olives, which I love, and again, bold flavors, so you don't need a lot of extra fat. All of this is being done with olive oil. I'm going to give it a little salt and pepper just to season the fish. Some fresh parsley is going to go in there. It's going to be delicious.
Looks that way.
Oh, and of course, we can't forget our, I'm using Campari tomatoes, any kind of tomato. I like these because this particular one is greenhouse grown, so they're fresh throughout the year. Okay, so let's get started. Oh, also we're going to do some roasted asparagus with olive oil. And in the back there I have a pot which is boiled with a no sodium vegetable stock. And we have our whole wheat couscous, which is going to go under our fish. Okay, so the whole wheat couscous, I'm using a traditional couscous. It's a very small grain. It's whole wheat. I've got, like I said, the vegetable stock. All you need to do for this couscous is boil your water or stock. I'm using vegetable stock, as I said. Pour it in. I've seasoned this with just a touch of salt, just to give it a little extra flavor. I'm going to give it a little stir. And then I'm just going to cover it, and I'm going to let that's going to sit for about 15 minutes. And when I'm actually going to turn this off. Once I take the lid off, it's going to be a fluffy, I guess it is a pasta. We'll have to ask Toni when she comes back. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to bring the asparagus back to the counter. We're going to cook our asparagus and our fish together. So we're back, and here we have the Chilean sea bass. The couscous is sitting and going to get nice and fluffy. I'm going to take a little bit of, I have in here salt. I use kosher salt and black pepper. You could also use sea salt or Himalayan pink salt. That's something I've been trying to get my hands on to try. So I'm just going to put a little bit, I'm just putting a teensy-weensy bit, just to bring out some of the flavors in the fish so that when we cook it, because we're going to flavor this a lot with the garlic and the lemon zest and our calamatas. They're hiding over here. Okay, I'm just going to give it a little bit more. Okay, all right. So what I'm going to do is, while we're here at our workstation, I'm going to try to cook the fish and the asparagus at the same time so that they're both going. What I'm going to do is very simple. I love this. I have this EVOO spray bottle, so you don't over saturate your food with oil. And I'm basically just going to give it a good spray. Let me see if you can see this at home. I like this over the ones that you buy in the store because the aerosol can. Do you know anything of I'm sure you do. Tell us why those are not as good as, say, a fresh
So they can be used, but this is not going to have any preservatives. When you use the little spray bottle with 100% olive oil, you're just going to get the olive oil, whereas the other sprays might have some other additives to it.
Right.
So this is the fresh way, and you're right, by using the spray bottle, you're not saturating it with the oil. So
Right.
as beneficial as olive oil is good for us and good for our hearts,
Right.
too much can lead to too many calories, and if weight loss is a goal for you, then it's going to be hard to achieve
Right.
if you're using a lot of oils in your cooking.
Right.
It's still better than butter.
I mean, listen, butter's great, but and the other thing that I think a lot of people, I'm gonna pop this in the oven at 425 degrees. It's gonna roast for about, I would say 10 or 15 minutes. Depending on your oven, it can vary. You might have to go a little lower, you might have to go a little higher. I'm gonna put this, I'm actually gonna put this on the middle rack, because our fish is gonna go on the top rack. And I'm also gonna put my trusty timer on, because I'm always busy and running around the kitchen with the family, and sometimes I forget. So the timer is always a good tool to use.
Absolutely.
So you don't forget.
You don't want to ruin this, overcook this wonderful looking
Right.
fish.
So that's going to be our next step. So we're going to move over to the stove, but before we do that, we've seasoned this. I'm actually going to, I'm not going to spray this because our pan has, I'm using an oven-safe pan. We're going to sear the fish on both sides. Then we're going to throw in our olives and fresh tomato and a little bit of garlic. We're going to let that sear up, and before we put it into the oven, we're going to put a little bit of this whole wheat topping on it with just lemon zest, and I'm going to chop up some parsley, and it's going to be delicious. We'll roast it in the oven for about 15 minutes, just till the fish is no longer translucent, depending on how you like your fish. I like mine a little bit more well done. I'm a little old-fashioned that way, but let's do that. Let's move on over to the stove and get this going. Toni, in the pan I have some extra virgin olive oil, probably a couple of tablespoons, and it's screaming hot. Well, it's supposed to be screaming hot. I hope they start screaming when I put them in. And you know, the good thing about fish, right, is that it doesn't take too long to cook.
Nope, it's good.
It's a great meal.
Yep.
But while I do this, I'm hoping for the sizzle. We got the sizzle. We're gonna just keep that up. We're going to do it about, I would say, I'm going to gauge it, but I would say it's going to be probably 4 to 5 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes per side. 4 to 5 might be too long, because then we're going to pop it in the oven. So while this cooks, I have some fresh parsley. I chopped up the tomatoes with a little garlic, and I have our Kalamata olives, which give us a ton of flavor. And we have some lemon juice that we're going to squeeze over the top, and a little bit of white wine. What's a fish without a little white wine, right?
All of our healthy things.
That's right. Okay, our fish is finishing up in the oven, and while that is finishing, I have our whole wheat couscous. It's become nice and fluffy after about 15 minutes. We're going to plate it here. Before I do that, I'm going to give it a good squeeze of lemon juice. It's going to go flavor-wise with our fish. I think I'm going to give it one whole lemon, right? And I'm going to throw in a little bit of fresh parsley, and I'm going to give it a little bit of stir. You could also add some lemon zest to this. Actually, I don't have my olive oil bottle, so we'll just give it a little spray of olive oil, just to give it some extra flavor, and it's good for us, right? And I like the spray bottle because you're not over saturating the foods, and it comes out in a good amount. All right, so we're gonna plate this up right here. It's gonna look lovely on our dish. Presentation too is a big deal when you're trying to eat healthier. Absolutely. Because the eye really catches the foods and makes it more appetizing. Like Absolutely. You said, the colors and the presentation and the way that we serve it. All right, here we go. So that'll be our whole wheat couscous. Get rid of that. I'm gonna just step over to the stove and check on our fish, which is almost done. Our asparagus is gonna cook another minute or so. I think they're gonna probably come out together.
Great.
And when the asparagus is done, I'm gonna use our trusty grater. I use this for everything. I love this thing. They come in all different sizes. And I'm just going to give it a little tiny bit of Parmesan cheese.
Yeah,
Is there any benefits to certain kinds of cheeses? I mean, I know they are a little bit unfriendly cholesterol wise, but are there any benefits? Like I love Parmesan cheese or hard cheeses versus soft cheeses. Anything that you could give our viewers some advice on when picking cheese?
Yeah, well, you know, cheese is definitely going to be higher in your saturated fat and cholesterol. However, the amount that you use is key. So when you're using this shredder right here, you're not going to get much of it.
Right.
Or you can do the low-fat versions, or like a part skim mozzarella cheese or a Swiss cheese. Sometimes they tend to have less calories and less fat, but still adding flavor to the dish.
Right. And a stronger cheese, right, would give you a lot
more flavor. Exactly.
Right.
So you don't need as much of it.
Right. So going back to what we were saying before, the more bold flavors you use in your cooking can also lead to a healthier lifestyle, because you don't need as much extra fat and sodium in your diet. So I'm going to go check on our fish and our asparagus, and hopefully it's ready to eat, and I can't wait to share this dish with you. Okay, so I'm going to take our fish and asparagus out. Asparagus has been in here about 15 minutes roasting on 425, along with our Chilean sea bass with the Gremolata crust. And I'm going to bring it over to the counter, and we're going to plate it up with our couscous. Okay, so our asparagus is roasted. I'm just going to plate it on top of our couscous in a artistic presentation here. We'll just do, it's running away from us.
Presentation really is key, because especially if someone's not used to eating healthy, you don't want to present a plate to them that doesn't look something like they're going to want to eat, right? You want to present something that's going to be appetizing to them and engage them and actually question, oh, maybe I will start eating a little bit healthier.
And asparagus is one of those foods I find that people like to they tend to shy away from, or put on a load of butter, which I think really my favorite way to have this, if we weren't having the pan, the whole wheat crusted fish, I would actually have laid this out the same way, rolled it in a little bit of the olive oil with the spray, and I would have put just a little bit of whole wheat breadcrumbs. Almost makes it like a, gives it that crunchy coating.
Absolutely.
But the asparagus really roasts up so beautifully in the oven. It really takes on a whole new flavor. You don't need a lot of fat for it to taste good. And I think you do it a disservice by pouring on all of that extra cholesterol. And we want to be healthy, and we want to teach our kids to eat healthy, and my children will eat the asparagus with the breadcrumbs, because it's, like I said, it's crunchy, and it just gives it that extra whatever that makes it more appealing. So anyway, this is ready to go. I'm gonna, just before we plate that, I'm just gonna give it a little grate of this is, like I said, it's Parmesan, and it's not very wide, right? There's not a lot going on here, just a little bit. And don't be afraid to mix a little bit of cheese with your fish. It's totally fine. Okay, all right, that is ready to go. I think I'm actually gonna give it one more squeeze of lemon, just to give it a little extra flavor. And I did before, which we may not have gotten on camera, I did put a little bit of lemon zest inside of the whole wheat couscous. Okay, our fish has finished up in the oven, and we're going to plate it here on our asparagus and couscous. We'll try to give you guys at home a shot of that. There we go. A lot of juice there from the wine and the tomatoes and the olives. Oh my gosh, our fish is so flaky that as I try to lift it out, it's falling apart. So I'm going to grab a spatula, and we're going to have to do it that way, because we want to keep it, although it's all going in the same spot, right? But we'll just sort of plate it like this. And these are Chilean sea bass steaks, so you could also do them with the skin on. These happen to have the skin off. That looks scrumptious.
It really does.
Where is my spoon? Oh, here it is. It ran away from me. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna get a clean one. That was on the fish board. But we're just gonna spoon over a little bit of this sauce, the olives. I'm just gonna puncture those olives a little, break them up. They're tender now. We could do that. Spoon it right over the top. We'll give our couscous a little extra flavor as well. There we go. And I'm gonna grab us some forks here. We'll just make it look pretty.
It looks gorgeous. I'm excited to taste it.
Okay, hope you like it. Hope we've done a good job here.
Absolutely.
And by we, I mean me. Okay, I'm gonna just put this hot pan aside. And I'm gonna use this fork. I'm gonna give you a clean fork.
Thank you.
And I wanna thank you so much for coming on the show and giving us some tips by Toni.
So flaky.
Good.
That's delicious.
I'm gonna try the couscous too. Now, honestly though, like I think whole wheat has a little bit more flavor. You don't need to do as much to it.
It's delicious. And the whole wheat couscous has the fiber that keeps you feeling full and satisfied.
Right.
So
Use
a lot
my
of people
fingers.
tend to fear carbohydrates and they avoid them. You don't need to exclude carbs. Your body really needs carbs. That's how we get
Right.
energy. But choosing whole grain carbs have the fiber that keeps you full and satisfied,
Right.
and also can prevent diseases like high cholesterol, high blood pressure, diabetes.
Right.
There are a lot of benefits to having whole grains in the diet.
Toni, it's been so fabulous having you on.
Thank you.
Please find Toni's nutrition blog.
Yeah.
It's tipswithtoni.wordpress.com.
Yes.
And you can also find her on social media at tipswithtoni.
Yep. At tips_with_Toni for my Instagram.
Okay.
And Tips with Toni on Facebook.
Okay. And you can find me, you can find these recipes on my blog, cheftini.com. You can also find me on social media at Cheftini. Thank you for joining us, and I look forward to cooking with you again.